everybody, I'm Sherry from Liberty Mission Farms. Last week we took delivery of 100 Freedom Ranger meat chickens and we got them situated into our barn brooders, and now they're about 7 days old, so it's time for them to move up to a larger brooder, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Previously, when we were selling to the public and we were raising hundreds and hundreds of meat chickens every year, we needed a way to both protect them while allowing them growing space and also continue to keep a rotation going. So we always needed a brooder to be empty for the next batch to move in. So this system worked really well, is having a brooder for the young chicks and then a larger brooder when they are a little bit bigger but not quite ready for pasture, and then we move them out to the pastures. So even though we're not selling to the public anymore, this has worked out really well for us and really well for the chicks. The brooders we started them in, as you probably saw on a previous video, if not you can go back and look at that, really protects them from the wind and any draft, keeps them very warm just for those first few days. And now they're a little bit bigger, but they're still not feathered out. They don't have all of their feathers. So until they get all of their feathers and can tolerate a lot of the changing weather or even a bit of rain, they really need to have that additional protection. So this larger brooder accomplishes that, and we're going to take you along and show you what we do next. So here is the smaller of our two brooders, and as you can see, the chicks are already outgrowing this space and they are just getting kind of messy. Really need to be moved to a larger space, but they still don't have a lot of feathers, so we want them to be protected. This is the brooder that we built just for this purpose, this in-between stage when they're not really ready to move out to pasture but they need more space. And it's set up to where they have a wind block, and we're using mulch, and they still have their heat lamps. The heat lamps are strung pretty low to start with, but we have done these slip knots so that the heat lamps are easy to raise and lower as we change their environment and get them accustomed slowly over time to not having quite so much heat. The boards on the ground are to hold their water and feeders and try to keep most of the mulch out of those things. So we're just getting this all set up right now, and then we'll be ready to move them in. Another thing that's different about this brooder is we use mulch for the flooring instead of the pine shavings we used when the chicks were younger. This mulch allows them to have a little bit of soil underneath where they can get dust baths. They already like to get dust baths even when they're very small. But it also allows us to not have to clean this out regularly. Instead, we just continue to add more mulch until it gets pretty high. Usually 3 or 4 batches of chicks can go on this before we have to clear it out, and then that is turned over into our compost piles. Here you can see one of the chicks up a little closer. You can see the wing feathers have come in, but really those are the only feathers that have come in. And chicks at this age, without all the feathers, really need to stay dry and out of the weather. That's why they'll be staying in this brooder until they get all of their feathers in another week or so. At first they're a little bit nervous, but already in just a few minutes they're starting to fly around and get used to their new surroundings, looking for food and scratching. So they're really settling pretty quickly once they find the food and the water. And after a few minutes they'll find those heat lamps as well and get themselves settled in. One of the reasons we have the heat lamps in the middle instead of along the edges or in a corner is we still want to avoid having the chicks bunch up at night and pile up too much. They're still small enough that those that were piled on the bottom could easily suffocate. So keeping the heat lamps near the center when they're this young, and also having additional heat lamps, helps them to spread out, still find the heat without piling up too much. We've also added a perch for them. Even though they won't have a perch when they're out on the pastures, they tend to enjoy it, but also it is another level that they can get on to help keep them from piling up. We have some really cold nights coming. We normally wouldn't move them when it's this cold out. It's going to be below freezing a couple of times this week. But we added the extra heat lamp. That should help them out a lot, spread them out so they can all find heat. Already some cloud cover has come. It almost looks dark in here now, but they're finding the heat lamps and getting under them, so that they will be fine for these really cold nights until they gain all their feathers. So all the chicks are in the brooder, getting acclimated, and seem to be enjoying their new surroundings quite a lot, flying around and have a lot more room to run. But they still have good protection from drafts and from, of course, the weather outside and predators until they get all of their feathers. Then they'll be ready to be moved outside onto the pastures. But until that time, they'll stay here. We'll watch for when their feathers come in, and then we'll watch the weather and make sure we've got a string of pretty good few days in a row, so when they move out to the pasture, they won't have to endure bad weather their first night or two out there. In the meantime, we'll just keep adding mulch in here, and that mulch will become our compost in the future. But it keeps them nice and clean, and we don't have to clean out this brooder until the chickens are gone from it, which is great. The layering method of their waste combined with a good mulch is good for them, and really adds to our compost piles. So they'll stay in here for a couple of weeks. Then we'll clear all that out to our compost piles, and we'll take the chicks and put them out on the fresh pasture. And come on back and we'll show you that process in another video. Thanks for watching.